She looked like someone's aunt, not a killer. In this haunting 1953 photo, old Dennison sits quietly inside Kilby Prison, Bible in hand. A nurse by profession, a murderer by choice. She poisoned her own 2-year-old niece for a few $100s in life insurance. But what most people don't know is this wasn't her first time. Years earlier, another niece, another death. They called it one of Alabama's most chilling murder cases, not just because of what she did, but because of who she was. Sweet, quiet, invisible, and that's what made her so dangerous. She wasn't a shadow in the night. She was the woman sitting at the dinner table, smiling across from you. This photo doesn't scream. It whispers. It dares you to trust the wrong person. And maybe that's the scariest thing of all. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes, they wear floral dresses and read scripture behind bars. This is the only photo ever taken of a Sicilian wolf, a ghost trapped in time. Native to the rugged hills of Sicily, this subspecies of gray wolf once roamed silently under moonlight, rarely seen, always feared. But by the late 1800s, it was already vanishing, hunted, starved, and pushed out by civilization. This single image is all that remains. Look closely, not just at the wolf, but at the warning it leaves behind. By the 1920s, the Sicilian wolf was declared extinct. Gone. Erased. Yet, whispers of sightings echoed into the 1970s. Was it real? Or just guilt echoing from a land that destroyed its own legend? This isn't just a photo. It's a funeral portrait of a species, a snapshot of silence. Sometimes extinction doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in the quiet choices no one sees until it's too late. And all you're left with is a photograph. They were just children, wide-eyed, wounded, wrapped in silence. The photo was taken after the Hebron massacre of 1929, when violence shattered the stillness of a sacred city. That day, mobs stormed through homes, synagogues, and schools. Innocence wasn't spared. These 3 young Jewish children, dazed and bleeding, survived the horror, but what they saw could never be undone. Behind those bandages were screams. Behind their blank stares, memories no child should carry. Hebron, one of the holiest places on earth, became a graveyard of trust. 35 families wiped out. Friends turned enemies. And yet, these children lived. They bore witness. Their silence became a testimony stronger than words. History remembers battles and dates, but this photo remembers pain. It remembers survival. It asks one haunting question. What happens when hatred enters your home, and you're only 10 years old? He weighed 456 pounds and had tried everything, but nothing worked. So in 1965, Angus Barbieri did something no one thought was humanly possible. He stopped eating. Completely. For 382 days straight. No food. Not a bite. Just black coffee, tea, and sparkling water. Doctors watched him closely, expecting disaster. But Angus proved them all wrong. Day after day, his weight dropped. His body consumed itself to survive. And yet, his spirit never broke. When he finally took a bite again, over a year later, he had lost 276 pounds. He stepped into his old pants. 2 of him could fit now. The world was stunned. Doctors were speechless. He kept the weight off for the rest of his life, gaining back only 16 pounds before dying in 1990. Angus didn't just break a record. He rewrote what we thought the human body could endure. One man, one decision, and a story that still defies belief. Before the world knew her name, she was just a California girl with a killer smile and dreams bigger than the Pacific. This photo? It wasn't taken at a movie premiere or red carpet. It was the calm before the storm, before The Mask exploded into theaters and Cameron Diaz became a household name overnight. Behind those ocean blue eyes was a fearless 21-year-old who had never even acted before, yet would walk into Hollywood like she owned the place. No agent, no acting class, just raw charisma and the kind of beauty that didn't ask for attention. It demanded it. Decades later, this simple shot by the pool feels almost too quiet for the woman she'd become. But that's what makes it haunting, because it captures a moment before fame, before the chaos, when Cameron Diaz was still just Cameron, unaware that history was about to remember her face forever. She wasn't just preparing her voice, she was preparing her soul. In 1958, backstage and alone, Eartha Kitt took a slow sip of honey, not for taste, but for survival. In a world that tried to silence her, honey was her ritual of resistance. Her voice, sultry and unforgettable, carried more than melody. It carried centuries of pain, power, and pride. This photo freezes a heartbeat before the storm, before the spotlight hit, and she transformed into a goddess of the stage. Behind the green lace dress and signature stare was a woman scarred by rejection, exile, and defiance. They tried to blacklist her, bury her, erase her. But Eartha? She sweetened the bitterness. One drop at a time, one note at a time. And when she sang, the world listened. Because some women aren't born performers, they're born revolutions. They called it nap time. But this photo from the 1950s reveals something far more haunting than rest. Tiny bodies, perfectly still, lie face down on small mats as a woman oversees them, not with warmth, but with eerie precision. The record player hums softly in the background. Was it lullabies or something else? For post-war America, order and discipline were sacred, even in kindergarten. But imagine being 5 years old and told not to move, told to lie there, completely motionless, in total silence. What did these children dream about? What did they fear? Look at their shoes, their hands, their rigid stillness. This wasn't just a nap, it was a rehearsal, a ritual, a strange moment in time when innocence was trained to obey without question. And now, decades later, we look back, not with nostalgia, but with a chilling curiosity. Were they sleeping, or were they being shaped into something else entirely? This photo isn't just rare, it's explosive. In 1941, Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, sat across from Adolf Hitler. Not as a prisoner, not as a diplomat, but as an ally. Their meeting wasn't about peace. It was about shared hatred. Al-Husseini sought Nazi support to fight Zionism and block Jewish refugees from escaping to Palestine. Hitler, in turn, found in him a willing voice to spread fascist propaganda across the Arab world. History tried to bury this image, to downplay a moment so uncomfortable, so politically charged, it could fracture narratives even today. But here it is, undeniable, chilling. Two men, one vision. The consequences? Echoing through decades of conflict. Look closely. This isn't just a photo. It's a fuse. A flashpoint that forces us to confront one of history's most inconvenient truths. That alliances aren't always forged in light. Sometimes, they're born in the darkest of shadows. He had no idea. Dressed as a pirate, with a plastic sword and an innocent smile, this little boy had no clue he'd one day command the most powerful office in the world. Standing beside him, his mother, calm, supportive, visionary, held a quiet strength that would shape history. This wasn't just a costume or a playful moment. It was a snapshot of hope, of dreams stitched into the heart of a mixed-race child growing up in a divided America. In a decade marked by civil unrest and social transformation, no one imagined this boy, Barack Obama, would break barriers generations deep. But this image, this simple, joyful image, captured the beginning of a journey that would redefine leadership, identity, and legacy. Sometimes, history hides in plain sight, behind a pirate's hat and a mother's hand on your shoulder. She stood like a statue from a forgotten dream, her hair cascading like a velvet waterfall, nearly touching the floor. In the 1890s, beauty wasn't just about appearance. It was discipline, patience, and silence. This Victorian woman spent hours every single day brushing, oiling, and protecting her hair, not for fame, not for money, but because her hair was her power. In a world where women were often told to stay small, she chose to grow, strand by strand. Behind the elegance of this photo lies a story of rebellion hidden in plain sight. Some called it vanity, others called it madness. But maybe, just maybe, it was her quiet form of protest against time, against rules, against being forgotten. And now, over 130 years later, you're looking at her, still standing, still remembered. One photo, one woman, one legacy that refuses to fade. He wasn't a soldier. He didn't carry a weapon. But in 1941, on the streets of the Warsaw Ghetto, this man was fighting a war of survival. His feet, wrapped in scraps. His hands, bloody, trembling, holding an empty tin. To some, he was invisible. To others, a haunting reminder of what happens when humanity vanishes. Behind him, life moves on. Children walk, women chat, but he walks the line between life and death. Every step a scream the world refused to hear. This photo isn't just black and white. It's hunger. It's fear. It's abandonment. Look closer and you'll see. This isn't just history. It's a warning. A reminder that silence is a weapon too. That indifference kills. He had no name in the papers, no grave in the books. But today, he has your attention. Don't forget him, because history has a cruel habit of repeating those we ignore. They stood side by side, eyes steady, shoulders square, yet behind their youthful gazes, a storm was brewing. It's 1937, Iran. These three Girl Scouts were more than just children in uniform. They were part of a quiet rebellion. While the world focused on war and their nation struggled between tradition and modernity, they learned discipline, survival, and leadership. But what history almost forgot was that girls weren't supposed to be here. Not in this uniform. Not in this moment. The girl in the middle? Her stare could shatter glass. She knew this was more than a photo. It was proof. Proof that young Iranian girls could carry a flag, lead a group, stand unshaken in the face of expectations. That day, their smiles were few, but their courage? Timeless. Because sometimes the loudest acts of defiance were the calmest expressions. He was called the Night Stalker, but on August 31st, 1985, the hunter became the hunted. After months of terrorizing Southern California with a string of brutal murders, rapes, and home invasions, Richard Ramirez made one mistake. He was recognized. In a twist of poetic justice, it wasn't the police who stopped him, it was the people. Enraged citizens chased him down, beat him bloody, and held him until law enforcement arrived. This blurry photo, taken moments after his arrest, shows a monster caged, bruised, sweating, and finally silent. The man who had whispered satanic phrases over dying victims now sat in the back of a cruiser, powerless. But behind that still face hides a chilling truth. Ramirez showed no remorse, no regret, just cold emptiness. This moment wasn't the end of his evil, only the beginning of a trial that would haunt the nation. Evil had a face, and on that day, it bled. They had been divided by concrete and fear. Families torn apart, dreams halted at a wall. But on November 11th, 1989, something extraordinary happened. As dawn broke, East German border guards stood frozen, not with guns raised, but with disbelief in their eyes. On the other side, a jubilant wave of West Berliners surged forward, not to fight, but to witness history crumble, literally. A slab of the Berlin Wall, the very symbol of division, was torn down before their eyes. And in that moment, decades of oppression cracked open. You can see it in their faces, confusion, awe, hope. Some smiled, others cried. But no one looked away. Because when a wall falls, the world listens. This wasn't just the collapse of concrete. It was the collapse of fear. And the birth of something greater, unity. This photo froze that heartbeat in time. The precise second freedom broke through the wall. He walked on the moon, and yet, he celebrated his birthday alone. This photo shows Neil Armstrong in 1969, just weeks after his giant leap for mankind. But instead of parades or celebrations, he was confined in quarantine. NASA feared he might have brought something back, something unknown, maybe even dangerous, from the lunar surface. So, the first man to set foot on another world cut his birthday cake behind sealed doors. No cheering crowds, no family, just a small group of medical staff in white coats, watching history eat a slice of cake. That model of the lunar lander in front of him, it wasn't decoration. It was a reminder of where he had been and how far he was from normal life. This photo isn't just about space exploration. It's about sacrifice, isolation, and the price of greatness. Because sometimes, even heroes come back to Earth to find themselves alone. This photo froze a moment in time, but what it truly captured was the weight of 1,000 years of monarchy resting in one single room. October 21st, 1950, the christening of baby Princess Anne. But look closer. Sitting beside her, the future Queen Elizabeth. Behind her, King George VI, the man who never wanted the throne. And beside him, Prince Philip, a royal in exile who gave up everything to stand by Elizabeth's side. In the shadows, Queen Mary, born in the 1800s, and the Queen Mother, both silent witnesses to 2 world wars. And there's little Prince Charles, too young to understand that history was already watching him. This isn't just a family portrait. It's the calm before decades of scandal, duty, heartbreak, and change. So much power, so much pressure, all captured in one quiet click of the camera. At first glance, it's just a man grabbing a Coke. But look again, because that man is Jack Kennedy. And the year? Sometime before the presidency, before the fame, before Dallas. Here, he's just Jack, young, curious, alive. The uniform beside him reminds us, this was post-war America, a time when Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink, it was a symbol, of victory, of home, of something cold and sweet in a world trying to heal. But behind the smiles and soda, this photo hides attention, because the man casually reaching into that vending machine would one day carry the weight of the Cold War, the civil rights movement, and a bullet that would freeze a nation in silence. This isn't just a soda stop, it's a haunting glimpse of history before it knew it was history, before everything changed forever. You're looking at one of the strangest photos of the Prohibition era, and yes, that's a monkey being handed a bottle of seized liquor by state troopers. It's the 1920s in New York, a time when alcohol was banned, crime ran wild, and hypocrisy flowed like moonshine. These officers had just confiscated a crate of illegal booze, but instead of destroying it, they staged a bizarre moment of rebellion, letting a monkey take the first sip. Was it a joke? A protest? Or just dark humor in a decade where law and chaos danced together? Behind the laughter, there's a deeper truth. Even the enforcers of the law weren't immune to its absurdity. In a country tearing itself apart over a drink, this image became a twisted snapshot of a nation caught between order and temptation. A monkey, a bottle, and a moment that made history by mocking it. No chants, no music, no shouting, just silence and 8,000 black men, women, and children marching down Fifth Avenue in perfect, unwavering lines. July 28, 1917, a date most history books skip. But this was one of the first civil rights protests in America, organized by the newly formed NAACP. This silent march was a response to the unspeakable, lynchings in Waco and Memphis, and a massacre in East St. Louis that left over 100 black Americans dead. They carried signs that read, "Mr. President, why not make America safe for us?" They demanded nothing but dignity and justice. No one screamed, but the silence screamed louder than any crowd ever could. This photo captures more than a protest. It captures the beginning of a movement, a moment when thousands stood tall so that future generations wouldn't have to march alone. Remember this picture, It wasn't just history. It was courage in its purest form.